future is in your, hands?
Hello, I'm Jenny. Welcome to another episode of Sumo Sheffield Plays. We're here this time with two members of the dev team from Spyder, a game that Sumo Sheffield released on the Apple Arcade in 2020. We're going to be looking today at play the game. We've kind of got a bit of an objective as well, so we kind of want to get to, there's apparently an underwater level that involves us walking on an orange. So really can't wait to have a look and see that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to both Nick and Emma, who are with us today. It will tell us a little bit about who they are and what they did. So could you introduce yourself, Emma, please?
Hi, so my name's Emma and I was the lead QA on Spyder.
Fantastic. And Nick?
I'm Nick, I'm a design director at Sumo Digital and I was the lead designer on Spyder.
Fantastic, thank you so much. So let's get started. Could you press play?
I am pressing play now.
Fantastic. So kind of as we're starting to load in, Nick, could you briefly describe what Spyder is for us?
I'll try. So it's an adventure puzzle game, kind of, for Apple Arcade where you play, we always said, instead of playing a spy, you play the spy's gadget. So the spy's gadget in this case is a 3 centimeter-ish little robot spider that can kind of go anywhere, find anything, and it's a bit of a David and Goliath type of game in that you're this tiny creature, this tiny robot in this human scale world and basically trying to bring down an evil organization.
Ooh, fantastic. So kind of, as we're kind of getting started, could you tell us a little bit about your role as lead designer?
Sure, yeah. So as a lead designer, you're kind of responsible for making sure that the overall vision for the game is fully represented and that everybody on the team, including design and across discipline, is all kind of going in the same direction, creating the same content for the game. And in Spyder, we had a fantastic team who really pulled together to sort of create something quite special in quite a short amount of time, really. And it's also quite a unique game in that we couldn't really find any other games that specifically played like Spyder. You know, we looked at things like Super Mario Galaxy, and that's not really the same because what we have in Spyder is we have a character that can kind of walk. We called it walking 360. You can walk on floor, walls, ceiling, kind of anywhere. And developing a game around a character that can go anywhere is quite challenging.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, and it took quite a bit of time to really discover what the game was, what really worked in terms of environments, what really worked in terms of puzzle, what really worked in terms of the tools and capabilities of the Spyder to create something that it's just this fun sort of 60s retro futuristic spy adventure from a very small scale.
Fantastic, thank you. So we're kind of, as you can see, we're kind of starting to get started in the level, right? You know.
Don't throw it off the edge.
Oh, there you go.
Remember?
Thank you.
See, they're both remembering stuff now. this is bringing back
Don't
memories.
do it.
So as you can see, Emma is doing a really good job getting us started. How do you start setting about getting the players started in this kind of world of, you know, you said 60s retro. How do you kind of set about that?
It was really quite difficult because it did take quite a long time to find the sort of spaces that really worked well at a human scale and at Spyder scale. And I would say that this is possibly like either the last or second to last level that we put together. So we sort of intimately knew the character by that point. And we felt that was the best way to approach kind of a starting level, was to make sure that we really understood the kind of the basic early steps that the character needs to take to introduce some of these core concepts of like this walking anywhere. It's quite an unusual game in that respect. So there's lots of things like, you know, walking on the ceiling that you'll see. You don't need to refill that. You can just go up.
I forgot about that. Do I need to carry this? I can't remember.
So like introducing these concepts of these sort of really quite huge spaces, but also making them so that they're easily breadcrumbed, so that players can find the things that they're meant to be doing next. Walk on the keyboard a bit as well, because like there's some super cool. Each level is kind of packed full of these little details, where you know you get Spyder really nicely interacting with the environment. And we wanted to create the first level that felt familiar. Some of the other levels are a little bit more I don't know if esoteric's the word, but it's like you're seeing human scale things from a very different angle. So like the next level is a bomber. You're seeing the innards of a bomber. And it could be quite confusing if you hadn't already had that reference of something that's a bit more recognizable. So in this case, we called it the desks, right? And interestingly enough, like the prototype that was put together for Spyder, that Apple basically signed the game on, used a very similar environment to this, even though the gameplay back then was really very different. So yeah, it took a little bit of time to work out the order of levels, introducing things gently to a player, because like I say, there's all of these different new concepts. Don't run across there. Emma, don't do it.
Oh my God. Is this bringing back memories? This is. I'm starting to remember now.
It's the evil eye of this security camera on you.
Yeah, so you were talking anyway, Nick, about you know, you were kind of wanting to make these levels familiar and stuff that the players would want.
Yeah. So you know, although it's not exactly someone's living room, there's things in here that really ground the game. So over on this side of the desk, there's things like family photos. There's a cup of coffee that's been spilt. There's these books, all of which have got beautiful details on them. 101 Gadgets of Spies. There you go.
That's very relevant.
It's got a reel-to-reel cassette recorder, which I have in my studio. But you know, it might not be so familiar now. But it was like a common iconic piece of equipment in this era, this 60s era of spy thrillers. So I'm thinking, things like the early Bond stuff. Also, like Our Man Flint was a bit of an influence. Also, like the British show The Avengers. It was all of this kind of early spy stuff. So we're starting to see Agent 8 using some gadgets here. So he's absolutely got loads of different gadgets, and we built all of these to be kind of really tactile. If we're playing on a controller right now purely because we're talking about the game, but obviously being on Apple Arcade, it's built around a lot of the touch devices, so the iPad and the iPhone. And we really wanted everything to feel really tactile, so really involved when you're using the gadgets. So you've got things like a screwdriver, so when you engage the screwdriver, you're kind of turning your finger on the screen to unscrew the screws and things like that. So everything in the world was kind of designed around this tactility, which is really, really nice. You lose it a little bit on controller, but it's just a bit easier to play in this situation.
So how did you kind of go about making sure that tactility was kind of your focus?
It's just really sort of looking at the suite of abilities that Agent 8 has and thinking about what the player interaction would be to trigger those. It's, like I say, it was quite a challenge because being on Apple Arcade, it's not just the touch devices. You can play this on Apple TV. You can play this on the Macs as well. And Apple TV was really interesting because we built this game so that it could be played with the Apple TV remote, which I think everybody thought at the time was going to be kind of impossible because it really is. It's not a simple game in terms of input. It is quite involved, but we managed to get it, and I finished it using an Apple TV remote. So, and again, it's all about sort of embracing touch, embracing that tactility of some of the Apple devices, and really ensuring that sort of comes across in play. And there's some great little moments here, like if you walk down on glass, you slide. So here's like the photo reference, and that's really there to give you a kind of sense of scale of the character you're playing. I think if we dropped you in some of the other levels, you might not have got that sense of how small the character is. So it was really important to us with this level to reinforce the overall game world scale with this level.
So you were talking about kind of tactility and stuff. Emma, you were QA lead on Spyder. Could you tell us a little bit about what that kind of entails?
Yeah, sure.
While still trying to unlock this box.
While trying to unlock the box at the same time. So I was in charge of basically setting up every single QA process that we had implemented on this project. I helped hire and set up the QA team as well and sort of train and onboard them. And then, we sort of were there to sort of support the devs as well. Did you want to go? Sorry.
If you don't.
No, you go for it.
I'll let you talk.
Really, we were there sort of there to test the game, but then also in a dev support capacity as well, where we help out devs with issues and stuff like that while they're testing, and we facilitate a lot of play tests on the devices. And then later on through the project, when we started to see external QA come online. Part of my job and some of my team as well was to sort of manage the tasking and the workflows of those external teams and make sure that we distribute and build to them and stuff. So, yeah.
So say we're playing this right now, right? Kind of as QA, what's going through your mind? How do you kind of look at this game and something, right? How do I test all this? How do I, particularly as we're talking about on so many devices, right? How does that work?
It was kind of a two-pronged approach, really. From a hardware side, we had like you said, like a large range of devices to cover, and that was across a couple of different platforms as well. So we had to really establish a target platform that we knew most users would be playing it on. But at the same time, even though we set that as a benchmark, a lot of our time was still dedicated to making sure that our lowest spec devices were hitting the same quality bar that our highest spec devices were. And similarly, you've got different control inputs across these platforms as well. As Nick said, we made the game really tactile for something like iPad, and iPhone. But when you're playing on Mac, it's on keyboard and on controller as well. So a lot of it was about making sure that we're keeping that consistency of that tactileness across the different platforms too. And then sort of the second approach to it, where we're talking the software side, this game was, one of its key pillars is exploring and discovering things. So even though there's a golden path to it, which we stick to and test around that, a lot of the emphasis around our testing was being as destructive as possible. You've got a six-legged character that can move across all surfaces. You can get those legs into some really, literally sticky situations. And we wanted the players to feel like if they are trying to think outside the box to solve a puzzle, that we've made sure that the game is robust enough to allow them to think outside the box and chuck things around and not get themselves into a point where they'd have to restart the level or whatever. So yeah, quite a big emphasis on being very destructive in our testing for this sort of game.
That must have been very fun.
It was. We got some great bloopers and stuff out of it in the end. Yeah, I think one of my favourites would be, and I think it might be on one of the levels where we had gravity first installed. His legs would get stuck to stuff, but his body would just ping off. So you'd end up with this spider that's got legs maybe 100 feet long or something, depending on how long you left the game. But yeah, that was a lot of fun.
That sounds like, kind of between kind of testing all that. And did you kind of find that? Did you find there's a lot of stuff out of the box that perhaps were ways of getting around stuff that perhaps the dev team hadn't accounted for?
Definitely, and I think we possibly annoyed them a little bit sometimes with how they would design a level, and our approach would immediately be, cool, let's do the opposite of everything they say in the objective text. Let's try and exploit certain gadgets, certain areas of the games. In that sense it was really fun because it just sort of it felt like we were helping contribute to a really robust sort of flow of the game.
Nick, you were laughing at that.
Well, that's your job.
Yeah, is to keep annoying the developers.
That sounds like. Was there anything that you felt that surprised you that came from the QA team that was?
Oh, it's been so long, I can't really remember. But Emma's right. There's kind of so many things that can go wrong with this game, but it's anything that kind of uses physics. So the legs for. Oh, I should probably concentrate on this.
We need to.
So it's 3, 4, 2, 1, right?
Yeah.
3, 4, 2, 1. So that's a little hacking device that we've just used.
So as a brief reason, right? When I tried this prior to going on this video and ended up failing about 3 times because I couldn't remember it. So the fact that Nick's managed it all in one is absolutely amazing. Anyway, sorry, Nick. Did you carry on? I
did design a chunk of it. So I guess if I mess it up, it's that's bad design. So having a character with all of these kind of physical attributes, the legs particularly, getting the legs to stick kind of perfectly to surfaces, it was really, really tricky, especially since this is really computationally expensive to do. And we've got a simplified collision mesh and everything on these objects to try and make that work. But you just getting this character to function in a world that's got all these beautiful soft rounded edges, it's organic, it's not trying to be like a box world, was a real challenge. And we've got things like I'm going to jump on this trackball now, being able to manipulate the mouse pointer by using the little trackball and things like that. It's again sort of going back to that tactility. We really wanted to make the game feel like you were physically in this world and interacting with this world. Let's see if I can do this first time. So we've got quite a lot of these little mini games in there as well that you play on these different screens that you interact with.
can you do this in one go?
I'll give it a
I
go.
want to see if you can.
I'll give it a go. So it's a very simple kind of, you just got to block the missiles and allow the files to get through the firewall.
And how do you go about communicating to the player like that they need to do? That there is a very specific thing that in this mini game they need to do. Is that the missiles are coloured differently, and is that how you went about it?
It possibly could be clear. I mean, what we do is like if I get it wrong, we do you can see now the red X is kind of lit up. It's like we allow for failure, to basically be an experiment, a way of interacting with the world, interacting with minigames and understanding some of the mechanics better. So nothing's very particularly punishing, like with the memory code thing. It's like you can do that as many times as you want. There's no kind of fail state on any of those things. So we wanted to allow players that room to just to fail and to learn without it being a punishing failure. So it turns out that was all the training mission.
Oh, and see, we got fireworks.
You got fireworks. You got everybody.
So well, you got fireworks.
Celebrating. So yeah, you're now ready for service. You've passed your driving test as a Spyder.
Fantastic. Obviously, we're starting to control, the main character, the Spyder, right? So how did you approach designing it to be the way it is?
It's a really good question. It's kind of like multifaceted as well. So Spyder came out of one of Sumo's game jams. And in the game jam, they got this kind of essence of a spider creature. It was very kind of spiky, robotic, sort of low poly spider that could walk on any surface, and there was like a little level you could run around, and everybody like really resonated with it. And I don't know if it's because at Sumo when we do game jams, we like to do animals that scare people. So we did a snake for Snake Pass, a dangerous looking snake for Snake Pass. We did a spider for like the second game jam that turned into a full project. So that essence of sort of walking anywhere was always there from the game jam. It's like it was just looking for a world, a wrapper to put that mechanic in. And we spent a long time developing Spyder. There is a lot of very sophisticated code going on under the hood here to make this character work, and it's a real testament to the team. But again, this like when this released in 2020, we had a huge range of devices to make this work on.
Oh no!
Broken the camera.
I'm so
we can talk
sorry.
about the camera. Actually, I want to talk about the camera.
Well, why not? Let's talk about the camera whilst
So
we're here.
the camera more than Agent 8 was probably the biggest challenge in this game. For a whole bunch of different reasons. It's sort of become a little bit more evident in the bomber because it's a little bit more walking on the ceiling. We didn't quite know how to approach it at first, so we tried a bunch of different things. So we had, in the final version, the camera stays kind of in world orientation, and Spyder Agent 8 walks within that orientation. We did try having the camera follow Agent 8's orientation, so the world would effectively spin around the character. We found that incredibly disorientating, but it was, in a weird way, kind of easier to control because you were always on a flat surface. Whereas in this game, you can be on the floor, you can be on the walls, you can be on the ceiling. And there's a very weird thing that happens when you go on the ceiling, in that the controls kind of reverse. And we spent absolutely ages, so much time, developing the control scheme so that it didn't feel like the controls reversed when you went upside down and felt really natural. And that's just like one of the challenges, but having a camera that can follow this character as you go absolutely anywhere in this world, again, was really challenging. Especially since initially we thought there's quite a lot you're interacting with on a touch screen, and we didn't feel like players would want to control the camera. So we tried to have the camera flow through the level, guide through the level, look at points of interest automatically. And one of the very first feedback we got when the game launched was, great game, but I really, really want to control the camera. So it was like something we had to go back in and kind of retrofit into the game, because that was a little bit unexpected. Because yeah, as a player on a touchscreen, you're doing a lot of things, and we really didn't think you'd want to be spinning the camera around at the same time, but it turns out people do. They want that absolute freedom of control, you know. So in this level, I love this level. This really is our kind of like David and Goliath level. You're inside a bomber that's off to destroy a tanker carrying humanitarian aid, and you're inside the guts of this bomber as this tiny little spider trying to bring down this huge human scale bomber, and it's just a really, really nice, all the little steps that you take to do it. So like the first objective was to try and like drop the undercarriage, right, drop the wheels, so to force the bomber to land, but that doesn't deter them. So it's like, okay, now we need to find the engine. So like the aim is to like try and destroy the engine to bring the plane back down to land. And it's one of the things I talked about a lot with the level design team was this kind of concept of one step forward, two steps back. And this comes a little bit from movies like Mission Impossible, where kind of the goal of any mission in Mission Impossible, or there's many in Mission Impossibles, but the goal is quite simple. It's like, you know, get the knock list or whatever, but it's all of those little complications along the way that make the mission interesting. And also one of the things that like a Mission Impossible sequence does really well is that your actions actually make the level or the mission harder to complete. So you might be thinking you're doing the kind of the most direct way to solve a mission, but actually as a consequence of doing that, everything gets much trickier. And so this concept of one step forward, two steps back was like something that was almost like a pillar for the level design in this game.
So I'm assuming that, like you say, like the fact that what once becomes quite a small task just ends up being kind of bigger and bigger.
Compounds
more steps,
almost. Yeah.
Well, that didn't work, so now we need to do this rather than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this level is kind of, this was an interesting level for the team to develop, because we did try and keep things quite grounded and realistic, whereas in this level, this absolutely is not what the inside of a bomber looks like. Even though there are like attributes. Oh, I love this bit.
I forgot that was supposed to happen then.
Yeah,
I
love
panicked.
this bit. Yeah. That was we can talk about that was a little bit of a production fight to get that in. I've completely lost my train of thought now. There's another little thing I'd love. I don't know if it's in this section, but one of the things that we did in this level to make it really feel like you were inside this bomber was I wanted the whole world to tilt. And that's actually a really, really complex thing to do when you've got all of these physics simulations going on, and you're having to basically tilt all this geometry on this almost like a gimbal. So we came up with this solution where you can see the camera's kind of tilting a little bit when it does that. It's actually all in camera, but what we do is we turn the camera to simulate this banking of the plane, but all of the physics simulations are then they're kind of like their up vector is tied to the camera. So it gives you this real impression that the whole environment is swaying, it's unstable, it's banking, and the more you destroy, the more unstable the plane becomes, and I really love that little touch. Another really interesting thing about this level is it really does loop back on itself. So this section where you're on the belt, you end up coming back through here, and these levels are really sophisticated in how they're constructed. The level team did a fantastic job on this game, and all the little details, like back where you were just dragging that box, to communicate that as something you can do. There's all the scratch marks in the floor and everything. Sort of all of these little world details are sort of a testament to sort of the love and attention and care that went into making this game. It was not an easy game to make, but everybody really banded together and just did an incredible job. I'm really proud of the team. Silly little moments like that, that's very slippy. But here we're kind of heading back to that engine that we crossed with all the hot stuff, and you got blown through the pipe here. So I really like this level in that the way it's constructed, it's just this kind of loop. You get to see things like the bombs in the far corner as well, like not kind of spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler. I'm sure people don't mind. If you're watching a video about Spyder and you don't want spoilers, I think you've kind of gone past that point.
Yeah, we're probably.
The level is called Bomber as well.
Yeah.
It kind of gives the game
Yeah.
away a little bit.
In terms of, so, you know, we're watching this playthrough right now, you know, and Emma's doing a really good job of doing it. In terms of, like, obviously, like you were saying, like, this is a very big bomber and you are very, very tiny. How do you go about, in general, designing something that is, like, levels that are of such big scale in comparison, but also keeping it within a decentish scale, I guess, so it's not overwhelming?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a lot of limitations on what we could do. We can't do these absolutely vast levels because, you know, of all these different hardware targets that we had to hit at. But it was really just going through the kind of process that we do on all of our projects, which is grey boxing it out, so very simple primitives built into, you know, then put into Unreal, just to get this sort of a sense of the flow of the level, and then it's really down to the art team with a lot of amazing smoke and mirrors in this game to, like, really sell that sense of scale and that world beyond even the play area. They did an incredible job. It really, I mean, I'm kind of stunned that, like, it's 2022, this came out, and like I say, we had to target a really massive, like, the high-end iPhones at the time, which were fantastic, but some of the lower-end iPhones and some of the lower-end MacBooks, which were starting to show their age a little bit, and having this sort of visual fidelity that was consistent across all of those platforms is an incredible achievement from the art team and from the code team as well, who really helped optimize a whole load of stuff in this game. This is a very tricky section. It normally gets everybody well done.
First time.
So now we're back again. We're back where those belts are. Sort of looping all the way around this engine, which makes, I guess, this level maybe isn't that big, but feels really big because there's a lot of traversal going on, but you're kind of all around this central point in this sort of second act of this level.
I was about to say, and the fact that, you know, unchallenged as well with that lovely sequence just there. And I was going to ask you a question, Emma, but I didn't want to disturb you at that particular moment.
That's all right,
which was just about, you know, we were talking about the amount of devices. How was that to test kind of between, you know, making sure that as QA you were testing the fidelity of the performance from kind of both, as Nick was said, the higher end devices and the lower end ones?
Yeah, I mean, I think by the end, we had one tester, so I'll call him out, credit to Jordan, who just memorised this game and got it down to a speed run so fast that we could basically plonk him in front of each device, and by mid-morning he'd have completed full playthroughs on the whole lot. And so I think the advantage of the fact that the game isn't a huge game, it's quite a casual sort of small game, and when you know which parts you're supposed to be exploring and where you're supposed to be going. Sorry, Nick, I'll hand it back over to you so you don't have to multitask. So that made it much easier for us to test, really, because yeah, we got our speed runs down to so quickly. I think it might have been around an hour or so per platform, which was very impressive.
That's very,
for sure, right? Because in the beginning, it would have probably taken us easily up to like a day's worth to sort of get through it all, you know, especially with bugs and stuff like that. So yeah, we had sort of like one guy who was very heavily focused on just getting through and ensuring that we've got that consistent performance across all machines and platforms. And at the same time, the rest of us were just focused on basically hitting areas where we're seeing red flags for bugs popping up and stuff like that. Really heavily testing new features. And for us, it was just, I think it was really helpful when we had an external QA team come on as well, and then they started to really hammer it in bulk quite regularly. And at that point, I think our responsibility shifted a little bit, where we were more almost like a bridge of communication between our external QA team, who were really like hammering away, throwing bugs in and playing through the game every day. And we're almost like that middleman that's helping the devs sort of communicate with that team as well as reproducing issues for them. So our role changed sort of a bit during development, where we went from playthrough heroes to pretty much just trying to keep all of the plates spinning, really, with all of the different playthroughs and all of the different localization testing and stuff that's happening. Because that became quite a big part as well, didn't it? I think we supported a lot of languages on this. And when you're thinking about all of the different, just phones alone, those different resolutions, all of the text has got to scale, and then you've got some right justified languages like Arabic, which we supported, which completely changes where your objectives and stuff sit. So yeah, there was by the end there was a lot of plates for us to spin, and I think we were really grateful to have worked with a really capable and lovely external team as well.
Thanks for watching. Join us for the next episode of Sumo Sheffield Plays Spyder. In the meantime, make sure you like and subscribe to our channel and follow us on our social media channels. See you next time!